is it okay to make little kids be pro skaters? You know, like if they're really good at it and they're 12 and they can do a 900 or whatever, is it okay to like make them be pros? We got that and a couple more questions. Welcome back to Rad Rat Video, channel about skateboarding. I like to answer your questions on this series, Ask Rad Rat. You can always submit them by going to the homepage of radratvideo.com. That's what all of these people did, including Al, who asks, should skaters be judged based not only on their trick capabilities, but based on where they're from? So if someone is from SoCal, if someone else is from Maine, they've both been skating for 5 years, well, the SoCal person would have actually 5 years of skating progression, whereas the person from Maine probably has about 2 when non-skatable weather is deducted. So my point is, what it is more impressive... I guess my point is, what's more impressive, a SoCal person who can tray flip a 10 stair, or someone who can maybe only ollie it, but had to hang their board up for at least half the year? I get what you're saying, because I grew up in Michigan, where it snows a long time, like 7 months a year. It's the worst. I have a bunch of clips I can show you where I had shoveled snow and just hoped that it dried out a small patch where I could practice some skating. It'd get so cold that my hands wouldn't move, so I'd have to be in gloves, and like my toes are freezing, and like I get it. If you don't have to deal with that stuff, it's not only easier to skate all the time, obviously, but it's also better, like the ground is better. If it hasn't frozen and thawed a million times, everything cracks and you know, that type of thing. You got smoother ground and it's nice out. Of course, it's easier to get good at skating. The thing is, are you going to care? You know, if you look up these clips, you know, the ones you're talking about, you see someone do an ollie and you see someone do a tray flip. Are you going to research their background and be like, you know what? It was probably real hard for him to do that ollie. He didn't get to skate as much. He's got to relearn his tricks. You know, if you're not from somewhere where it snows and gets really terrible, you have to relearn your tricks in the spring. Like if you don't have an indoor skate park, which I didn't, like I'd have to relearn how to do stuff every spring. It sucks, you know, and there's so much time you've wasted just relearning things to catch up to where you were 6 months ago. And then you can progress a little bit, and then you got to start over again. I get it, but I don't care. You know, if I see a really good clip, I don't deduct points based on where they're from or where they're filming it at, or like, you know, research someone and be like, well, you know, he had a tough childhood. He got kicked out of high school, and so that hard flip, well, you know what? He gets extra points for it. It's not practical to try to keep track of it. But if you ever seen a dancing show on TV, they've always got some kind of sad story, you know? And they like to save it to right before the big, you know, when they could get kicked off the show. And they had to struggle with all of this, and no one in their town liked to dance, so they were doing it alone. If you had like a skateboarding TV contest. I don't mean a competition like the X Games. I mean like each week people vote for their favorite. If there was a show like that, then your background and all that stuff could really matter, but that's like for popularity. But as far as just enjoying skateboarding content, I don't care about that stuff. You know, as much as I get it, I just don't think it matters. All right, the next question is from Grosha, who says, there are 20 million skateboarders in the world. How many of them are freestylers? Is it 1%? Less? More? What's the best informed guess? So this is a really tough question to try to quantify. And the way I did it is I counted freestyle deck brands, and I came up with 5 or 6. They are Decomposed, Moonshine, Mode Waltz, Cirrus, and Skate Kings. Skate Kings used to make freestyle decks. I don't know if they do right now. The difference between them, don't have one. I got a bunch of boards right there, but I don't have one right there. They flatten out the tails for Caspers and truck stands. They're a little bit smaller, stuff like that. They got some tweaks that make it a bit easier. So I'm imagining if you are a freestyler, not someone who does a couple of tricks, who can do some tricks in freestyle. You can do a Casper and maybe you throw one on a bank sometimes. I mean, you are a freestyle skater. You probably have a freestyle board, you know? So let's call it 5 brands. I went to an online skate shop and I counted street deck brands, and it was over 100. So, and some of these brands, these aren't like the smallest brands. These aren't the, part-time brand that only sells online and doesn't have a team, or, something that's in your local place but doesn't have distribution. So we can probably double that easily. I bet we could go a lot further than that. And then volume. Like the big brands sell a lot more than these little brands. So I would double it again for that. So you got 200 brands compared to 5, and those 200 brands sell as much as 400 brands, just to keep it simple. I think that makes sense. So that's about 1 to 2%. So I think you are about right on that guess as to how many skaters you would need to be a freestyle skater. Now, I think it's a little bit higher than that because a lot of people who buy skateboards aren't street skaters or vert skaters. They just ride around. They ride a skateboard to school, that type of thing too. So, they are part of the percentage as well. So if you cut them all out, maybe it's 2.5 to 3, but yeah, it is not very many. I've never met someone who skates freestyle. My friend Tony, we learned freestyle tricks together, which is a different story, but like I've never run into someone at a skate park who has been doing freestyle. You don't often do it at a skate park, so it could be happening 3 blocks that way, and I just don't know. But yeah, I've never met a freestyle skater, so the numbers are pretty small. All right, next question is from Rad Rat Jr., who says, longtime fan here, I was wondering what your neighbors think about skating in the backyard. Do they get angry about it? I have the nosy neighbors from hell, and I popped a few steezy kickflips one time in my backyard. 5 minutes later, I heard a knock on my front door from my neighbors telling me that I was being too loud, and they said legally they will have to call the police and submit a noise complaint if I continue to keep making noise, even though they have 2 dogs that bark 24/7. They make me angry. I want to do a buttery nada spin on their mailbox. What should I do? I want to see the buttery nada spin on their mailbox. That's what you should do. Make them call the cops. Like, the cops aren't going to do anything about skating in the backyard. If you're skating and you have like a giant boom box from the 90s and it's aimed at the neighbor's house and it's midnight, okay, that's a bit of a different story. If it's 6 p.m. and you hear rolling and popping sounds on a skateboard, come on, that's not a noise complaint worthy thing. Make them call the cops. They're not going to come, and if they do, they're being like, they're not going to do anything about it. Like, that's just stupid. What I would do is I would keep track of this stuff. I would keep track of what they do. I would keep track of when they complain. I would keep track of all this stuff, because you don't know when you're going to need that. You don't know when they're going to do something. You don't know when they're going to try to get revenge on you and jump your fence and steal something of yours to get back at you. I would keep track of all this stuff. My neighbors, they don't complain when I skate in the backyard, but they don't have any right to, because they'll have a cookout at 3 a.m. and have a million people over. I work from home right up there. I'm in my basement right now. Right up there, their driveway is it's 15 feet from my ear when I'm at my desk. Every single day, someone comes up to pick someone up for school or for work or something like that, and they honk the horn. I'm right there, every day. So I don't know what my point on that was, other than to complain about my own neighbors. But I've never had them complain about skateboarding. But if they do, there's really nothing that they can say about it, because they're just as bad. So yeah, I would skate anyway. I wish I could skate more in my backyard. I've just got that little 8x8 patch of wood that I made. It's all warped. It's not flat at all. There's no speed to roll and do a trick and keep rolling. I would love to be able to skate in my backyard, and if I did, I would do it every day, no matter how much anyone complained. All right, next question is from Head Ben's Hawk, who is talking about child prodigy skaters. He says, I've been noticing there seems to be a trend in recent years of kids turning pro at a very young age. I'm talking as young as 8 years old in some cases. What is your opinion on this? Do you think it's good to invest in prodigy skaters, or do you think this is detrimental to those kids? Love your videos. Hope you're doing well. So he sent 4 different examples. I'm going to show some clips of those as I talk about this. I'm not talking about these particular kids, but just this is as an idea, as a concept. So remember when Nigel Houston had dreads? He was like 10, and he was doing board slides on handrails. He was like skating handrails, and his dad filmed, I'm pretty sure, and like he put out parts when he was a little kid. And like that worked out for him, you know. He is very good now. He is probably one of the top street skaters right now, and he was really good as a kid. But like you think about, could you imagine filming your 9-year-old son trying to grind a handrail? Like he could get really hurt doing that. And as a parent, you're like pushing him to do it because you want to get the footage. There's a level of that where it's kind of weird. But at the same time, if it's the kid's passion, if they love doing it, and like you could be setting them up for their dream career, they could be living the exact type of life they would like to live as an adult because you help them get better at skating as a kid. So it's a really complicated thing because you don't know what kids are going to like, and you don't know what they're going to be good at, right? So you might put your kids in all kinds of different classes. Maybe they really excel at one, and you try to push them to keep doing that. Like, wow, you're doing great. Maybe you could join the team when you're in school and things like that. They might hate it, but be good at it, you know? Or they might really enjoy something, and you know they're kind of not going to go anywhere with it, so you don't want to be going to all these meets and all this stuff knowing that they're never going to get off the bench. But how do you figure out all that kind of stuff? So I took tennis as a kid between like 3rd and 4th grade. I was not allowed to do sports with the school, because being on teams is how you're led astray by the devil or something like that. So I was not allowed to do any of that. But I took a tennis class one time, and I have a 2nd place trophy out of 2. I had a singles match against one of the other students who was my brother, and he beat me, and I got a 2nd place trophy for it. But you know who else played a lot of tennis as a kid? Is a pro tennis player, played professionally for decades, named Andre Agassi, and he wrote a book where he said this: I play tennis for a living, even though I hate tennis, hate it with a dark and secret passion, and always have. Do you think his parents knew that? Do you think you could know that if you have kids, you know? And if they skate, like they probably like it. But it could be a passing phase. They might really like skating because their friend does, or that, you know, cute girl in class likes skaters, and so they wanted to put out some skater vibes, but they don't actually have a passion for it. They don't really enjoy it, but they're good at it, you know? You don't know. You might be pushing them into a career where they're going to hate it, or worse, a career where they don't do well and also get badly injured. So it's a very complicated thing. And you just don't know. When your kid is 8 and they really want to do something, like how do you tell whether this is a genuine thing that you should be supporting, or whether you should be like, well, hold on, you know, you can skate in the backyard, but like not putting them in contests and doing all this type of stuff. It's a question that you can't really answer because you just don't know how things are going to turn out until they've turned out. Everything in life is at some level a gamble. You either do something and make that move, or you don't. And if you never do anything, then you just sit at home all day. So I don't have an answer. I don't have a way to figure it out. There's no calculus for how much you should push your kid into a sport, or into skating, or into art, or into anything. If they love math, do you force them into being an accountant? I don't know. You know, you have to decide that stuff for yourself. But I definitely get what you're talking about. You know, for the kids that you don't see, you've sent some parts of, you know, kids who have put out video parts and who have done crazy stuff on Vert, and who have, and who have grinded handrails and have done all this kinds of stuff. There are kids out there being pushed by their parents who can't do that stuff, but are really trying. And that kind of sucks. So, I don't know. The only real rule of thumb is don't be a jerk. And just hope that everything works out. That's all I've got on that one. If you have kids, you know, it's up to you, but just really think about it. And that is it for this time. If you have questions of your own, go to radratvideo.com and submit them through the form on the homepage, and I will definitely take a look at it. I may select it for a future video. But that is it for now. I will see you next week, and thanks for hanging out.